I saw a lot of trucks going back and forth between warehouses and manufacturing plants multiple times a day, where we'd load a truck for half an hour, drive 5 minutes, and then unload it for half an hour. And seeing that and seeing the amount of effort and labor involved in those processes impacted that.
Chris, coffee, tea, or something else? What fuels your mornings?
Uh, for me, that is Coke Zero.
Zero.
Coke Zero. That's my strong.
Straight to the Coke Zero. Okay.
Me too. It's the same thing all day.
Yeah, the starters you mean to go on, I guess.
Yeah.
W- When you were a kid, what did you think you'd grow up to be?
I think most of the time I assumed I'd grow up to be an engineer, and that's kind of what I ended up
Huh?
doing early career. And yeah, I think that was, other than probably the earliest me that, from middle school on, that was the goal.
Where did that come from? Was it like family were
So
in
my
there, or
dad's an engineer.
okay?
Yeah, I always enjoyed building things and designing things and just have fun on that side of things. So it's fun.
Okay, love that. What's one piece of technology that you can't live without?
One piece of technology I can't live without. I don't know, this one's hard. My phone is the most
Yeah.
obvious answer to that, but it's kind of the lame
Yeah.
answer. But yeah, that's probably it.
If you could fast forward 10 years and see one impact that your work's had on the world, what would you want that to be?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I generally don't think of my career that way, right? Like I actually am maybe a little more, I don't know. I prefer to kind of live the now and figure out like what I can do now
Mhm.
to make the next thing great, right? And so I don't know that I care. Like I don't know that I care as much about like what it looks like 10 years from now. I care much more about like what we can do
Right
today
now.
and tomorrow to make that better.
Yeah,
And I think if I'm focused on that, then
the
I'll get
rest
to
will
where I want
work
to get to.
out.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's a good answer. I like that. I like that. All right, well, welcome to Machine Minds, everyone. I'm your host, Greg Tarusian, founder of Samson Rose, your robotics talent search partner. And on today's episode, I'm joined by Chris Smith, founder and CEO of Slip Robotics. They're a company reimagining how freight is moved through automation, making the once tedious process of loading and unloading trucks faster, safer, and autonomous. Thanks for being on the show today, Chris.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate the invite, and yeah, look forward to a good discussion.
Yeah, my pleasure. Let's jump into it. So let's go back and start with your journey. What were some of the key experiences that led you down the path towards robotics and logistics automation?
Yeah, so as you talked about, Slip is focused on loading and unloading. I have had a lot of experience with that in my career. So some of those kind of times that were most impactful to kind of leading to where I am now are I started my career off at Cummins in their warehousing, kind of from a corporate level, working on with 3PLs on continuous improvement. So I saw a lot of trucks going back and forth between warehouses and manufacturing plants, multiple times a day, where we'd load a truck for half an hour, drive it 5 minutes, and then unload it for half an hour. And that was seeing that and seeing kind of the amount of effort and labor involved in those processes kind of impacted that. And then going to Tesla, where I figured we were building a whole new factory, and surely we're going to have an on-site warehouse and not have these like back and forth trips all day. Seeing that not happen, and still see that off-site warehouse happen, and kind of reinformed that. And then kind of lastly, when I went to a startup called Wally Automation, we were building a robotic valet. We were then building big robots to move heavy payloads, and ultimately those things all combined. That previous experience for me to realize, if you can move heavy payloads autonomously across bad surfaces, and you can load and unload trucks quickly, right? And that's
Yeah.
really where that kind of defined all those kind of individual experiences. It's kind of unique looking back and saying, it's a unique set of experiences that kind of led to kind of the innovation that we're driving at. It's
Interesting. Was there a defining moment in your career where you were like, yeah, I want to build something of my own instead of working for other people building it.
Yeah, I honestly am like am not a typical entrepreneur in that like I didn't want to do a startup. Like I
Really?
actually like the reason I went to Cummins coming out of school was I was super risk averse, right? Like I went to a over 100-year-old manufacturing company for that very reason. Um, but I think what drove me towards that was realizing, you know, there are certain risks that you definitely should take, right? And they are risks involving, you should bet on yourself. You should learn how to bet on yourself, and you should drive towards that. And I remember for Slip, I remember talking with one of my co-founders, Dennis. We were looking at a FedEx truck, that had a bunch of equipment in the back of it to make loading and unloading easier, and realized that, look, if this is that big of a problem, like we can solve it in a much easier way than what's currently being done in the industry. And so, it was kind of one of those realizations that like you have to do it, right? Like it's too good to just not try,
Yeah.
right? And
So
and that's how Slip happened. Is it was really just like we couldn't avoid doing it, which is good. I mean,
that's a good calling. Yeah. So entrepreneurship kind of like came knocking at your door and was just like, hey, you have to do this. If you don't do this,
yeah. Like I mean,
someone
if
else
you,
will.
and to be fair, I think if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you better believe that that you have to do this, right? Like because if not, um, it's too hard. Like
Yeah.
you have to believe that like the opportunity is too big to not do.
That's fair. That's fair. So take us back to that beginning. You mentioned your co-founder as well, and where this idea came from. So what was the original inspiration for Slip Robotics?
Yeah, so what we are doing is very much what we thought we would do, which
Yeah.
is good. We, from the very beginning, said, look, we're going to build a big flat robot that you load freight onto, that goes onto a truck, that comes off on the other side, right? So you get a 5-minute load, a 5-minute unload. We had built big robots like that before. I knew from my previous experience exactly where, our customers would be in this space. And so we had a pretty clear plan from the very beginning of what, the solution looked like, what the customer, go to market looked like. And so, but when I say we, I have two co-founders. I have myself and then Dennis Sedlak and John Jackaman. All of us worked together previously at that startup called Volley Automation. John and Dennis know each other from like grade school, so they've known each other for a long time. But yeah, we'd all worked together and knew how to build and iterate on hardware and software. And so, in 2020, we decided a couple weeks before really the pandemic hit, which was terrible timing, we decided to go do this, right? But we ended up raising our first round of funding in January of 21, and have since grown and commercialized the product, grown the team, done a lot of things that have been really good for Slip.
That's awesome. So the startup journey is never really like easy, straightforward, like linear. Talk us through how you went from that idea and the first concept to something tangible. Like what were the first prototypes, tests like, or maybe even just getting in with customers?
Yeah, I mean, our strategy was very much like, let's build our MVP very quickly, right? So like I said, we raised our money, our first round of funding in January 21. By September, we were at or late August, early September, we were at our first customer.
Wow.
And that was with a solution, hardware, software, all of that put together. And then it was, okay, we have the solution, now iterate super fast, right? With the customer and figuring out, what works, what doesn't, what are features that are required, what are not as necessary, and really validating all those assumptions we had up front, right? We did that for a couple of years, right? So like that was definitely the hardest part of the process. I remember when we took our first robot up to a customer, and there were four of us, I think, at the company at the time. And so you're deploying, to a big company, a Fortune 500 company, with four people, a bunch of robots, and just the realization that, like, oh man, we need to support this thing. We need to, iterate quickly because, some things work, some things don't. And so that was a super difficult time, right? To get all those things, basically balancing all those, the improvement plus the support plus the, new design and new commercial traction, all with a 4-person team, right?
Wow.
And so that was fun, but I mean, that's honestly, that part of the journey is where, like, the fastest rate of progress happens, right? Because you are learning every day, every hour, things that need to get better or are good enough, right? And things that are good enough are gold, right? Because you don't have to think as much about them, which at that point is really important.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, there's so much here that I kind of want to dig into, if that's okay, because even what you're sharing now is just, it makes it very clear how robotics companies, they are challenging, right? They're notoriously challenging. Any hardware company, right? Like figuring it all out, balancing a lean team, probably small amount of initial capital investment, whether it's self-funded, friends and family, or a pre-seed, the engineering hurdles, the customers, funding hurdle, all of that stuff. How did you, one, keep going in that? I'm curious. And then two, how important were these first customers in like that collaborative way of working? Because a hurdle some people can't get over is like, hey, we've made this thing, we'll go and do it. And they get pushback with the customers. It's not sticky. No one wants to like iterate on it, and then it dies, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of things I dissect from that. One, how do you keep going? Well, I mean, I have great co-founders, and that's what ultimately gets you over that hurdle, I think. I mean, there's a lot of things going on, and like ultimately you have to have people that like are rowing the boat with you, wherever that boat's going. And so that's important. The other thing, as far as customers go, I mean, our early customers don't get nearly enough credit for the patience and willingness to work with us and help drive good product. So super appreciative of those kind of early customers, but also, it comes back to, one of the founders was on site every day with that customer. And so it was literally learning as much as we could, as fast as we could, and applying that to the product as fast as we could, with the other co-founders, right? So it was, I think that was a big part of why that relationship kind of became the way it was, is because there was an inherent trust that, like, look, we're in this too, right? Like, we are going to do everything we can do to make this good. And so, and then the other part of that is having a compelling enough product where people are willing to have some patience, right? Like, I mean, if we were doing something that was less interesting, it probably would have been a lot harder to do that. But our product is, if somebody is going to do what we're doing, they have to kind of use us, because we don't really have a competitor in the space right now. And so that drives a lot of that.
Love that. Key takeaways for me then is awesome founders, founding team, and then really understanding the problem set from your customer. Because if they can't see like the light at the end of the tunnel, if they don't see the value of what you're bringing, they're not really going to have the patience to wait for something to work or to work with you, right?
Yeah, and the benefit we had was I would have been our customer at Tesla and at Cummins, right? So like, our problems were not like, we don't understand what the customer needs, right? Like, we understood that, right? The problem, so our problems came down to like, man, this part of the design is insufficient in these environments, or they were kind of those nuanced issues, or really unique kind of use case issues. and you have to solve all those, right? Like those aren't just because they're like unique and kind of long tail problems doesn't mean you can avoid them. But those are the types of problems you want to be solving. If you're trying to solve with your customer the problem of like how do I get value of this when it is working, then it's going to be a really hard road.
Yeah.
Right? So.
Interesting. So let's talk more about the technology then, if we can shift gears here. I'm curious how SlipBot technology actually interfaces with trucks, or does it, and docking and just the workflow.
Yeah, so the beauty of what we're doing and the hardest part of what we're doing is we don't require any dock or trailer modification, right? So basically we are a big flat robot. You put freight, whether that be pallets or totes or whatever it is on top of us. We go into the truck, we stay in the truck during transport, and then we come off on the other side. We basically, whether it be a 53-foot dry van trailer or a box truck, we want to be able to go onto that truck. And so a lot of our kind of what we've developed and what we drive is the ability to be kind of general purpose in that environment. Fortunately, docks are actually, like, by what they are, they're basically a physical API. So they basically interact with, trailers or trucks and, forklifts and the dock. And so we basically leverage that to avoid having to do a lot of kind of integration and implementation.
Yeah, that's awesome. Is there like a weight limit on what you can move?
Yeah, so currently we move 12,000 pounds per robot, which is 36,000 pounds into a trailer. So for a mobile robot, that's a really high payload capacity. We will, in the near future, be increasing that such that unless you're running a super heavy permit, we will hold anything that goes into a trailer.
Very cool.
But right now at 36,000 pounds, that's a lot of the market.
That is, that's a lot more than I was expecting you to say.
That is one of the hard parts, right? You don't have a lot of AMRs that are moving that much payload.
Well, I was actually going to ask, I don't know if you can share, and it might actually be the weight thing, but what's one of the toughest technical challenges your team's cracked so far?
It's the combination of a bunch of things, right? So it's a combination of weight on a slope. So trailers don't sit on a flat surface, so they are on a slope. Right. So a lot of AMRs, they carry 1,500 kilograms on a flat floor, right? But we have to do 12,000 pounds on a, up to 6 degree slope, APA slope. And so that's unique. We have to go over a dock leveler that is not flat at all, right? It has a bunch of angles. We need to do all that while trying to be as short and as light as possible, right? So we take weight in the truck, we take height in the truck. That's kind of our trade-off. And so we want to carry as heavy payload as possible, being as short and as light as possible, which are obviously, those requirements fight against each other. So so doing all of that, and then also making it as our ROI is dependent on what we can price our solution at, right? And so we want to make the robot as kind of inexpensive as possible from a BOM perspective. What's unique about our solution compared to most mobile robots is we don't have high utilization, right? So we sit on a dock, and then when the trailer gets there, we move for maybe 5 minutes, and then we sit on a trailer. And so, our robot's moving 5% of the time, and it has to capture a ton of value in that 5% of time, which it does, right? But that means that, we need to be really cognizant of the costs we add, whether they're actually driving value for our customers or not, right? And so
that makes sense.
When we think about our bill of material, we really focus on, is the customer going to realize the value of this additional cost? And if not, then it probably doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, it's all margins, right, at the end of the day, especially with logistics. So
for both us and for our customers, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that can derail everything, right? If you don't fit in, if there's no value,
it doesn't work. Like, I mean, nobody, you might be able to sell a couple people, but you definitely can't scale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there any common misconceptions that people have when they first see your robots working or looking at the technology?
Yeah, it's a different workflow than most, right? So like people often say like, well, so it goes in the truck, so like I'm never going to get this thing back, right? That's kind of like the common concern, right? And the reality is that's true if our target market was long haul trucking, right? But our target market is kind of short haul, high frequency shuttle type routes where you're going back and forth all day, right? Most of our customers are going back and forth 6 times or more per day.
Wow.
Between 2 facilities. There is a lot of that type of trucking. It's not well known because it's usually kind of dedicated trucks where the drivers are, employees of the company, like manufacturer. And so, while yes, our robots have, tracking and we know where they are and can, find them at any given time. That's rarely actually needed because they're, if they're not here, they're 5 minutes away at the other facility, right? In most of the use cases we currently, work towards.
Yeah, that makes sense. Love to shift gears again and talk about your team culture, things like that. So let's talk about, you obviously mentioned your founders. How many co-founders are there?
So I have two co-founders, so there's 3 of us.
3 of you. Okay, awesome. Outside of the founding team, who are some of the, I don't know if you can name or just the roles, but key first hires that really helped shape Slip Robotics?
Yeah, I don't know that I think what I'd say is at startups, your first hires are all key, right? Like I actually wouldn't like break those out a lot. I think, your first, 20 employees, 30 employees at a robotics startup are like, they all have to hit, right? Like you have to, they all have to be gold or you have to find someone else really quickly, right? And the reason for that is there's so many things you have to do, right? So, like if you think, you have to, because we're full stack, right? We do everything. We design the robots, we assemble and build them in-house. We deploy to our customers, we support them in-house, right? So none of that is like outsourced on our, for what we're doing. So if you look at like, okay, if you only have 20 people and you're doing all of that, every individual is actually doing multiple roles, even at 20 people, right? You have people that are doing, production and quality. You have people that are doing customer success and sales and marketing at the same time. You have people that are doing both, software engineering and production. Like it just. So I think it's really important, especially among those early employees, that you have people that are highly confident in what they're good at and also able to jump in a bunch of other things when necessary to get them across the line, because you're constantly trying to flex these resources into kind of the biggest problems of the day. And so it is hard to find people that can do that can both be really good at what they're doing and also have capacity to do other things. But those are those early people at the company that have really driven the success that we've seen in Slip.
Yeah. Curious, slightly related, on your opinion, not right or wrong, but you obviously had 3 co-founders, right? And I work with startups in the space all the time, and you see a huge variety of sole founder or sole technical founder, first-time founder. You see the co-founders that work together for ages. You see 2 technical co-founders, or someone more sales and marketing or ops focused and someone technical. What is your opinion on the best makeup here? Because it sounds like you guys were founders and the team for a period of time to get you past key milestones, right? But not everyone's in the same boat. Not everyone's lucky enough to have 3 awesome people starting.
Yeah, I don't know that I would prescribe like what is the right. I definitely think it is super helpful to have like a history together, right? I mean,
Mm.
like I think the history of, I mean, me and Dennis were the first two hires at Volley Automation, right? The startup we worked at before, and John joined shortly thereafter. So like being early on and having kind of built stuff together on really tight schedules and deadlines um, just fuels a ton of confidence in each other.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's really important is like you have to have just a ton of confidence in your co-founders. Um, I think I would never want to do a startup by myself. I think that would be like just really tough to. Yeah, I think it's just like um, it's really nice to be able to lean on other people on certain parts of the business and know that
Yeah.
those parts will just get done, right? Um, if you can't do that, it would be, yeah, I mean, you basically double or triple your your exposure on what you have to be thinking about. So
Sure.
that's
Yeah. Not. I agree. I agree. So obviously the first key hires you mentioned, the first kind of 20 people, and I think it's a really good point to take away that the variety of work people are capable and willing to do. The same cliche of wearing multiple hats, roll up your sleeves, all of that stuff. It's true. As you scaled, two questions. One, how have you kept like that startup energy alive? Because obviously at a certain point you start putting structure in place. And then also like, is your approach to building the team still similar, or is it like now more defined in terms of the roles?
I think because kind of what I talked about, where you want somebody that's like really confident and good at what they do and also flexible, um, that type of person scales really well, right? Because that means they can afford to become more and more just based on that thing that they're highly confident in. And you can find people that are basically filling the gaps of the things they had to, you know, were being pulled onto previously. So that type of person, the people that are just like all generalists, those are the ones that have more difficulty, right? Because like you're starting to try to get more and more experts, right? And like people who can really drive really good performance in that area. And so, um, so yeah, it is kind of an interesting transition. We've definitely been going through that. I mean, this year we've doubled our headcount so far this year. So like,
Nice.
it's definitely been a big growth year for us. And it's difficult, right, to make that transition from like having to worry about everything to having to worry about a subset of things, but also making sure that people that you don't lose the willingness to throw the whole team at a problem if it has to be thrown. And like that's the thing that I think we never want to lose is you want to be able to really attack a big problem if necessary.
Yeah, that makes sense. What kind of cultural mindset do you try to cultivate, especially as you hire more people? Is it still keeping this real variety of role and all hands on deck kind of mindset?
Yeah, I think like, I mean, the one cultural value that we have that I most like, really, there's two that I really really like. One is the other ones I like too, but like these are the ones that like I think speak to what is most unique about Slip. The first one is that we rapidly deploy elegantly simple solutions. Because I love that one because every word means something in that one. Like we need to do things really fast, rapid. Like the speed at which you execute determines most of your success. So rapidly deploy. So deploy, you actually have to give it to people, which is not as common as it should be in our industry in particular.
So true.
And then elegantly simple solutions. We want to find the easiest way to solve the problem that we're going after, right? We don't want to find, there's no reason to introduce complexity into solving problems. It's really, we want to give the easiest way for our customers to solve their problem as fast as possible. And so like, when I look for people that have a history of doing that, of like finding a problem quickly evaluating what is the easiest way to fix that problem or to solve it, and then that they actually deployed and realized the benefit of their solve. Right. Those are the things I'm looking for when I'm. And then the second, just real quick, the second cultural value is we realize disproportionately high value for our stakeholders. Right. So if you're, like you will not succeed in life if you're one for one. Like basically, if I pay you, $100,000 and you give me $100,000 of effort, like you will not succeed, right? Because like I need a return on my capital, right? Like just like my investors need a return on their capital, everybody needs a return on their capital, right? And so like you have to give disproportionately high return. And so like as a founder, I have to do that, right? That's how I get my disproportionate return. That's how employees get theirs. That's how our investors get theirs. Is if we provide that. And so the only way you provide that is people that kind of have that attitude, and know that like, in order for me to get disproportionate high value, right, I need to provide it as well.
That's awesome. I really like that. Yeah, I haven't heard anyone speak about it like that or lay it out in that way, but it's true. It's that chain. If everyone plays that role and does what they need to do to give that value, then you're going to be successful, no doubt.
Yeah.
So you guys are obviously deployed, commercial, you have customers. You mentioned some of like the key environments that you work in, within a company, short, high volume kind of deliveries there. Is that where you think you guys make the biggest impact right now, or are there other kind of industries or types of customers that could benefit from your technologies?
Yeah, I mean, right now with the product that we have on the market, short haul high frequency is where we will provide really good ROI, right? So that's like inbound, outbound of manufacturing, between distribution centers, like in a region, those types of things. We also do a decent amount of just big and bulky type moves. Those don't necessarily have to be high frequency, just because like it's really annoying to load really long or awkward pieces into a trailer. We have autonomy that can handle that, right? And we carry a 12,000 pound payload, so like we can move some big stuff that forklifts actually are challenging for them to move. So those are kind of our biggest things right now. That being said, like we will, the way we see things is, we think in the future, Slip should be on every trailer on every dock, right? There should be a Slip product there, and because our firm belief is that like docks are the driver of kind of inefficiency in the transportation logistics network, and so if you can improve the efficiency there, you can improve the efficiency of the whole network. And so that's really what we're driving. We did that first in this short haul high frequency because that's where there's a lot of pain. It's like really well aggregated there because they're doing so much of it. Whereas in the future, we'll do it more in kind of this medium, long haul, those types of routes, and might even go across kind of modes of transportation as well. Whereas right now we're doing, just trucking. We might look into some of the other modes as well.
Yeah, makes sense. So talk me through and share with people who aren't actually familiar with it, but what does it look like without your technology? Because you got the driver with it. Do they like pull up and then a whole team has to come out to try and offload, or is it them one by one with like a dolly? Or what does it look like? Yeah.
So typically, like the way I always explain it is typically, the workflow right now is I get a request, like let's say it's a warehouse to manufacturing plant, right? Like I get a request for a bunch of raw material that I want to build into a product to my warehouse. My warehouse then picks those from the warehouse shelf to a staging lane on the dock. And then when the trailer gets there, a forklift, is usually one forklift is going back and forth for, about a half an hour to 45 minutes, putting those pallets from that staging lane into the trailer. That trailer then drives 5 minutes down the road, and then somebody else for a half an hour goes back and forth, taking that into a staging lane, and then that goes to the line. Usually either the same person or a different person takes it to the line. So what Slip does is we basically become the staging lane. right? So they take it from the warehouse shelf, they put it onto the slip bot. That way, when the truck gets there, in 5 minutes, everything's in the truck. On the other side, 5 minutes, it comes off the truck, and then they take it to the line. So we take out that staging lane to trailer movement, and that's where our labor savings. Additionally, the driver's not waiting for that, which is an additional savings.
I can only imagine what the reaction of people is, like logistics teams is, when they first see it working. What kind of things do people say, or how do they react?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those. I think the biggest compliment like we ever get is like, there's one of two things people say. One is like, what? Why doesn't everybody do it this way, right? I'm like, it's a great question. I'd love to answer that question for you. You know, we'd love to solve that problem. The second one is like, oh, I had an idea for this, 20 years ago, and my answer to that is like, well, I'm glad you didn't do anything, right? Like, I don't know how to answer that one a lot of times, other than like, it is a fairly like, it makes a lot of sense in those type of workflows, right? It obviously doesn't make as much sense in a long haul scenario where then you have to figure out how to get this thing back. But I think, we are confident we can make product that solves that type of problem.
For sure. Are there any memorable deployments that come to mind that really like validated what you guys are doing, or that stand out?
There have been some great ones. Let me think about how. Yeah, I mean, there's one particular automotive OEM deployment that I think what was most amazing about that one was the first time where we had good data on 4 weeks before this deployment. This is what their flows look like, right? And then literally the next 4 weeks after deployment, this is what they look like. And we basically showed their lead time was reduced in half and made much more consistent. Their labor, they were able to take out labor, in week 2 of the deployment. So I think those are the type of deployments where, the value is realized so quickly for our customers. That's typically how a deployment looks like for us now. It wasn't always that way, right? But now it's, I've done a lot of automation deployments, or been around a lot of them, and it's very rare where you can see like just the stark change from the week before to the week after. Usually it's a much longer realization of ROI. But those are the ones that get me most excited.
Yeah, I mean, you're basically working as you're intended to do, people are adopting it straight away, and it's having an impact straight away. You can't really ask for much more, can you?
It's also why our expansion happens usually very quickly, because when the value is realized very quickly, it makes it much more easy to go and say, okay, where should we put this next, right, within our customers.
What does it look like just on that, the actual penetrating a new customer, and they're probably like, hey, we'll pilot it with one truck, or I don't know how it looks.
Yeah, so we typically do like one route initially, right? Because it's, it's a well-defined kind of between this location and this location. We already have some kind of route there that's being operated kind of manually right now. So we do that first. And then expansion is relatively easy, because you say, okay, well, what other routes at this warehouse are like that? And then what other routes across your network are like that? And so, we've expanded with most of our existing customers, right? And kind of continue to do that because it's a relatively easy kind of stepwise expansion process.
How have you found more on like the business model side, like what are people more receptive to? Is it like a CapEx expense, RaaS, leasing? Like, what do your customers prefer?
So we're a pure RaaS model. So all of our customers are on the robot as a service model. That model is good for us. It's good for our customers. It aligns us really well on kind of what from a performance standpoint. we have a really unique asset. So like owning maintenance and things like damage repair, where our robots are made to interact with forklifts, and forklifts are big pieces of mechanical equipment. But yeah, it gives us incentive to make sure that it's performing as it should. And I think our customers appreciate that.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a ton of sense because they want to make sure like uptime's there, repairs are, people are incentivized the same way to make sure that this is always going to be working. And I guess
Yep.
when you get new versions, right, and updates and stuff like that, it's probably easy, hey, we're just going to swap these out for the newer ones.
Okay. Yeah.
Let's talk about the industry as a whole for a second, because logistics automation space has been heating up. Huge use cases, huge need, can't get the people. What shifts are you seeing with how companies are thinking about adopting robotics across the board?
Yeah, I definitely think there's no longer a question of like if we should adopt robotics, right? Like I think that question existed for a decent amount of time. Honestly, I think it has shifted to where should we start, right? I mean, most of the places we go to, we are the first automation on the logistics side for sure. In some cases, they have automation like in factory or in facility. But on the logistics side, there aren't honestly that many solutions. There's a growing number for sure, but still kind of early stages for at the same time. So so it's really looking at like, okay, well, where what solutions make the most sense, which ones can provide the highest ROI, which ones can I use across the broadest set of my network, right? I mean, that's always a big question. Is I don't necessarily want to deploy a solution that only works in this tiny segment of everything that I do, right? Now, I think that also becomes a challenge on those that are providing solutions, right? Because you want to be incredibly focused initially, and the broader you get, like the more risk you take on from a performance standpoint. And so yeah, that's the biggest probably conflict that is created between provider and customer, is just trying to figure out what the right balance is of what you can offer versus what you should avoid offering.
Yeah, interesting. I hadn't thought about it that way. How do you see, if you fast forward like 5 years, the automation technologies and industry reshaping warehouse and dock operations?
Yeah, I think docks are pretty highly underutilized. Meaning, if you automate docks and they act, more reliably, then you actually need a lot less of them, right? But at the same time, so there's kind of two conflicting trends. One is that, right? And then the other one is, well, but if you make the cost of going through those docks less, right? So I think of like transportation as like a bunch of nodes on a network. If your node cost goes down, then you flow more stuff through that, right? At the same cost. And so yeah, I think what the biggest trend I think that happens is just a higher utilization of dock assets, whether that be dock doors, warehouse space, equipment on those docks, because your costs are going down and your speed is going up, right? And so those are the things that Slip is most like. What we are trying to attack is the cost of speed, right? The cost of going faster in your transportation network. If you can, any time in history where you have a method of transportation that decreases the cost per unit of speed, it takes over that portion, right? So like there aren't horses anymore because cars are both faster and less expensive, right? So yeah, that's what I think will continue to drive that curve that's created with new technologies that allow that to happen.
Yeah. Okay. And what's next for Slip Robotics? Are there any new features, product lines, other markets that you guys are trying to attack? Anything like that on the horizon?
Yeah, I mean, we're going after short haul frequency now. We will go over after kind of a lot of big remaining segments in our market. Early next year, we will be coming out with a product that does that attacks a lot of different segments and multiple products lines to do that. I think there's a lot of opportunity in the market for something like Slip. I think what our responsibility is to figure out is kind of what general purpose things can we do, right? That a lot of customers can get a lot of value from, and that's what we're focused on. Is we are not in the business of creating a unique solution for every customer. That is not in the customer's best interest. It's not in our best interest. And so it is, okay, what are the big problems? How can we solve them in an elegantly simple way for that large customer base?
Nice. In the robotics space right now, or automation in general, I don't know how much time you spend looking at other things and just the technological advancements, and there's so much going on, right? It's a very exciting time.
Yeah.
Personally, what's driving your excitement?
I think what's most exciting right now, there are a ton of things, and I definitely don't keep enough up to speed on. I mean, things are just changing so quickly that it's hard to. But I think what is really interesting, and what is honestly I've gone back and forth a bunch on, is like the cost of unique form factors is going down, right? So it's much less expensive to create a robot or a automation solution for a really smaller niche workflow, right? Like that's become less expensive. Because sensors are less expensive, but also because like software to run that is less expensive to develop. So I am not yet sure whether we will get more capable general purpose solutions or many more really like targeted, unique solutions to solve our problems, right? I think we're going to see both happen, and I'm not sure which one wins, right?
Yeah.
And I think there are certainly areas where unique solutions will definitely win because the market is big enough that obviously Slip is really focused on one unique workflow. We think that unique workflow is big enough that there will be place for like an optimal solution there. But there are a lot of workflows that are smaller that I'm not sure if they will be kind of unique form factors for those, or whether a general purpose robot will be more applicable. So
yeah,
that's what I think is going on in the industry right now. I think that's why you have a lot of opinions on like humanoid versus not, or I'm kind of like I could see humanoids winning some of those, like the aggregate of those use cases that general purpose are good for. But I could also see somebody saying, well, yeah, but it's much less expensive for me to make a solution that just does that thing really well than it was previously, right? Both from a hardware, software, and development standpoint. So I don't know. That is what I'll be super excited to see, kind of how that all plays out.
Yeah, interesting times for sure. It's curious to see what the next 10 years holds in this space, because not only the technological advancements, but then the adoption and public perception and all of that stuff, and costs coming down. So yeah, it's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, I think one thing I'd say real quick on that, like the public perception part, I think what's interesting is we are, I was talking to somebody about this just the other day, was we are really used to we're actually, as a society, pretty familiar with our physical labor being supplemented, right? Like, we've known for a very long time that there are animals that are stronger than us, right? And then there were machines that were stronger than us. So we've fully accepted that we are not the best at physical labor type things. I think what's happening right now is we're coming to the realization that we might not be the best mentally at stuff, which is super uncomfortable for us. I think, but it is funny to think like, well, why is that any worse, right? Or better than being physically supplemented, right? And so it's an interesting challenge for us right now. I think, I think the question then becomes like, well, then, just like with physical supplementation, we still, even though a forklift is stronger than us, we've still been driving a forklift, right? Things definitely change when you don't have to do that anymore, right? And so it's going to be an interesting transition for us to make of that mentality of like being there being computers and machines that are better at thinking about certain things than us.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of the AI adoption now as well. I mean, we can go down a very large rabbit hole, but I know we're at time. So I think that's a great point to end on, and also to food for thought, right? Thinking about your own self, your own life, and how you're adopting technology, and the areas that you could probably rely on technology more than you do right now, and what the future will hold. So
the parts that you don't want to. Right. I mean, like, I think
exactly.
the great thing is like we can choose to, I think that's the great thing about it is you can say like, look, I would love, there's things in my life I would love AI and robotics to replace. There are things I would not. Right. And I think making conscious choices about that is really important for us right now.
True. Very true. Well, Chris, look, thank you so much for being on the show. This has been really super interesting, and I've loved learning about Slip Robotics and your founding story and just the space in general. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
No, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. How can our listeners learn more about you and follow along with what Slip Robotics are doing, and maybe join you guys? I know that you're probably hiring if you're still expanding.
Yeah. So we're definitely still hiring. SlipRobotics.com is our website. You can definitely learn more about our solution and capabilities there. We are pretty active on LinkedIn. So if you want to, the latest, that's the best place to go. And feel free to reach out to me as well. LinkedIn is a great way to do that, and I'd love to connect with people.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much again. And I look forward to keeping in touch and seeing all the cool stuff that you guys do in the space.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.